Na mtazamaji, unatazama TV47 Breakfast awamu ya Jumanne. Tuko naye Delina Dhiambo ambaye ni mwanasaikolojia, kwa lugha ya kimombo tunasema ni counseling psychologist, na kwa tukizungumza kuhusu afya ya akili. Na mtazamaji, una nafasi ya kuweza kuchangia katika majadiliano haya ukijibu swali, ni kipi haswa kwa maoni yako ambacho kinasababisha magonjwa akili katika taifa letu? Kule mitandaoni ni TV47KE kwenye Twitter na kwenye Facebook, na hata kwenye SMS unaweza kutuma maoni yako ni 22047. Na kuona Wadrispa Nyunono uko pale unatazama moja kwa moja. Mimi na kuona pale Alberto Nyakundi amenya, karibu sana kwenye watch party. Nora Ogua pia na kuona kwenye watch party, tuweze kujadiliana. Karibu sana Delin. I know it's a very cold morning.
Oh, yeah.
Naam. Jana jopo ambalo lilikuwa linafanya utafiti liliweza kuwasilisha ripoti kuhusu afya ya akili, na tunaonekana kama taifa tuko pabaya sana. Ni kipi ambacho unaweza kusema kuhusu nafasi yetu katika masuala ya afya ya akili kama taifa letu?
Thank you very much. Tafadhali utaniruhusu
Go ahead. It's the TV47 Breakfast Show.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, thank you. So yesterday we had the Mental Health Task Force that was inaugurated last year by the President. It was inaugurated on the 11th December 2019, and the main aim of the task force was to bring together mental health stakeholders to talk about the issues that affect us as Kenyans as far as mental health is concerned. And it was a nice presentation. There are so many people who came and talked about their issues, what they require from the government.
What are some of the issues which took the center stage when we're talking about our health, the health of our mental health as a country?
Well, one of the issues that was mostly addressed was depression, because that is the most common mental illness in the world. And in 2014, the World Health Organization ranked Kenya number 4 in terms of depression, number 4 in Africa. And that means almost 1 in every 4 Kenyans has a mental health issue, mostly depression and anxiety-related orders. Yeah, so that was one of the main issues, rather one of the main mental health issues that took center stage.
All right.
Yes.
Dear viewer, you're speaking with Delina Dhiambo, who is a counseling psychologist. You're free to ask questions online and even on our SMS line. You've mentioned depression and anxiety. In our society as we speak, do we also have any other form of mental illness that affects us and has not been unearthed that you have interacted with?
Yes, we have so many mental health illnesses. Like I said, depression, we have anxiety, we have bipolar disorders, we have panic attacks, we have schizophrenia, and many more. But the most common that especially has been seen affecting people lately has been depression, and which has led to even suicide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we've had very many cases of suicides and people killing themselves. The statistics are scary, because when you speak about 1 in every 4 people,
yes, 1 in every 4
has a mental condition.
Yes.
Is it possible that people live with these mental conditions without recognizing or realizing that they have an issue mentally?
Yes, so many of us live with these conditions, and mostly when many Kenyans go to seek primary health care, that is for conditions such as coughs, basically migraine. At that point, at the primary health care facilities, that is when they realize, or rather, they're told that they suffer from mental illnesses or a mental health disorder, which means they did not know.
Well, which ones are some of the mental conditions that can really be, can really remain embedded and hidden, that someone doesn't realize? And if you, what are the symptoms that you can spot in someone and see that this one has a mental condition and needs help?
Well, most of these mental conditions, they have to be clinically diagnosed. So you cannot just go throwing words haphazardly that you have depression. For instance, I'll talk about depression more because that is what is mostly affecting most of us. Recently, we've seen cases of children killing themselves, spouses killing each other, teachers, even elites killing themselves. Like recently, we saw a guy who...
Yeah, a lawyer who jumped from a story building. Yes.
Because of gambling. So most of these issues are brought about by issues like gambling, substance-related issues, sexual violence, gender-based
So
violence.
it can be gambling, which is a bad behavior and an addiction.
Yes.
It can be sexual violence
Yes.
that someone is going through. What else?
It can be even unstable homes.
An unstable family,
family.
financial issues,
Yes.
and all that. There's something I really wanted to pick. Is it possible that I can look or relate with someone and see one or two things that can help me deduce that they have a mental illness, so I can help them before the issue becomes worse?
You cannot really tell whether someone has a mental illness, but
Or depression, for instance.
for instance, depression, for you to be clinically diagnosed with depression, because nowadays, I think the term depression has been so commercialized that it has lost meaning. We don't even know, or rather most people don't even know the real meaning of depression. So, and I think especially in Kenya, we tend to confuse stress or chronic stress and depression and sadness, because maybe someone will fail an exam and they'll be like, oh, I'm depressed, or maybe something bad happens and they're depressed. But depression is really deep, and for you to be clinically diagnosed and say that you have depression, you have to have experienced some symptoms for at least 2 weeks. And some of these symptoms basically is you lose interest in some of the daily activities that you're used to doing. Prolonged sadness.
Daily activities meaning some things like showering. You don't want to shower
things
anymore.
that you like.
You don't want to jog anymore.
Yes. So when you lose interest in some of these daily activities and it reaches a point that your life is unstable, you cannot even function, and basically it's affecting your functionality.
You just want to brood and remain stagnated in one place.
You don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to shower, you don't want to go to the gym if that's what you liked, you don't want to vlog if maybe that's what you like, and stuff like that. So when you lose interest in some of the common activities, or rather some of the activities that used to interest you, and you get into a depressed mood and a prolonged state of sadness, then we can say you're depressed. But it has to be confirmed
clinically.
By a professional.
You mentioned that some people confuse chronic stress with depression. What is the line in between?
The line is that for depression, you have to experience these symptoms for at least 2 weeks. But for stress, these symptoms don't last. Or rather, they don't last for more than a month. So it's between, let's say, the onset is between around 3 days to a month. But anything more than that, we can call it depression. But
is it possible that stress can lead to depression?
Yes, stress can lead to depression. Uncontrolled stress, unmanaged stress can lead to depression. And we get stressed because of so many reasons. Hard economic times, substance abuse, relationship issues, violence, and stuff like that.
But we cannot include stress under mental illness. Stress is a different issue.
Yes.
All right. You also mentioned anxiety. Is anxiety the same as depression? Are the symptoms the same? Is it dangerous? What is the worst that it can do to anybody's life or body?
Well, anxiety and depression are quite different, although many a times they're conjoined. So someone experiencing depression, many a times they tend to also have an anxiety, or rather they might experience anxiety attacks. For anxiety is basically a sudden feeling of uneasiness, and you're anxious of maybe the unknown or the known, and mostly it manifests physically, through your body or somatically. You tend to have a fast heart rate, sweating profusely,
a tight stomach. You feel like you have a stomach upset sometimes.
Yes. Difficulty concentration. Some even go to an extent of shaking.
And what is the worst that can happen when somebody is either depressed or is anxious? What can it do to your body and to your system and to your functionality as a human being?
When you're anxious and it manifests physically, definitely you lose concentration, you lack focus, and at times it might manifest even in migraines. You tend to have headaches, stomach aches, difficulty in breathing, and for that it can lead to something called anxiety attacks. Yes, and you just find yourself uneasy. Some even end up crying.
Just for that. At what point does it get to now suicidal thoughts or murder? Because now we have reached a point where, according to the news item that we just played and we're going to play shortly, this has been related to suicide and homicides and all that. At what point?
Uncontrolled depression, or rather early detection of such cases, definitely lead to clogged thoughts. And most people are afraid to come out because of the fear of stigmatization, or maybe because they relate it to something else. Mostly in our country specifically, people still don't know the real meaning of mental health. So especially in the villages mostly, people tend to relate mental illness to witchcraft, some spiritual causes, some they'll say you're cursed. And we tend to think that only these people who are on the streets, who maybe walk naked or who look like they don't have their things together, that they're mentally depressed. But we are not spared. No one is spared. Anyone can fall victim of mental health issues. Yeah.
How can someone know that now they are going down too far? They're sinking in too deep. Does one feel despair too much? Is one totally cut off? At what point do you know that now you're sinking in too deep and it might get to the suicidal bit or the part where now you kill someone?
Okay. The moment you feel a sense of worthlessness, hopelessness, it could be because of a known reason or not. You know, many times you wake up and someone tells you, I'm so low. Or when you ask them, why are you low? They cannot explain. So when you tend to feel your sense of worth has reduced, maybe you start isolating yourself, you start losing interest in activities that you used to like, then I think that is a red flag, and it's good to seek a mental health expert opinion.
Before we get into wellness and how you can actually put yourself together, we are living in an economic time that is tough for everyone. What are some of the courses that you're interacting with? What are people saying is really, pressing their head to the extent that now they get to depression? What are some of the courses that are rampant in our country?
Mostly unemployment. Yeah, that is a very, very big factor as far as mental health is concerned. Unstable homes, like I said.
Before we go to unstable homes, unemployment, basically.
Yeah.
What does it cause someone to feel that they get to the point where they're depressed? Is it worthlessness? Is it what feeling does it bring into someone to the point where now it is battering the brain and the health of the head?
Well, certainly because of the hard economic times, every youth out there. So we have so many graduated youths out there with no jobs. And most of them try here and there to make ends meet rather. And when it reaches a point that you have to wake up, hustle every day, or look for a job and whatnot, definitely you reach a point of despair.
Yeah.
And when you reach a point of despair, you tend to start indulging in alcohol or substance abuse. That leads to addiction. That leads to suicidal thoughts in some cases.
Is it possible that the fact that someone has dependence, someone feels like they're obligated to maybe take care of parents and things like that, can contribute to the battering of the mental state?
Yes, it can. Too much pressure. Also, the fact that many of us like to keep our feelings within ourselves. We don't like talking about our feelings, and the moment we tend to bulge these feelings inside of us, then it reaches a point that we can't take it anymore. And that is the point where some people get to suicidal tendencies, or because the burden is too much, they tend to release it to other people, and that's how you hear cases of a spouse has battered a spouse or has killed a spouse because of the pressure. Maybe if it's the provider in the family, let's say the dad or the mother, and maybe every day they try to provide for their kids, they try to provide for their family, and they don't get, because they want to end that suffering. Most people resort to suicide,
or killing the next person.
Themselves.
Bad families or unstable families. When we talk about this, people assume it's just marriage, but at some point, others say it goes beyond even children. When there is instability in the home, they can sink to depression. What is the whole picture when you're talking about unstable families and then relating it with depression and anxiety?
Well, some of the mental health associated issues, rather that relate to mental well-being as far as unstable families are concerned, one, it could be separation of parents, and that could be because of either divorce and stuff like that. So if one of the parents, or rather if parents divorce, that affects a child, right? Because this child is used to seeing both parents together, but here's a situation where the child is only seeing one parent and was wondering where is the other parent. And in such like kind of situations, it gets to now co-parenting, and many times it gets a bit difficult to co-parent. So, and also the child is confused. Where am I going to mommy? Where am I going to daddy? Why can't they just be together? Also, in the case of even dead parents, and the child is taken, let's say, to live with relatives, and mostly these relatives are not welcoming enough, that will affect a child psychologically, mostly because this is an environment that the child is not used to. Also, when children go through these issues, and most parents tend to ignore, or rather they tend to overlook when a child says, "Mommy, I don't want to do this," or they don't give children that mental space to talk about the issues. These parents we call authoritarian parents. For them, it's either my way or the highway. So they don't give children the mental space to discuss their issues.
To be able to express what they're thinking.
Yes.
Marriage has become one of the issues that are causing mental illnesses. What exactly happens, and where do you place the issues that happen in marriage in our country right now? What are some of them like? What kind of issues do you handle, for instance?
For marriage, I think mostly finances has to play a part. Yes. Well, we all get married for different reasons, right? So I feel some people probably have issues in their marriages. It could be because of financial situations, maybe because the love is no longer there, or the friendship, or abuse, domestic violence. And most people tend to stay in these marriages because they're afraid of what people will say.
Even when infidelity creeps in.
Yes, or especially in our African culture, many times we don't want to go back home because we're afraid to be told your marriage failed. Can't you see your mates have stuck in their marriages? Why are you coming back? So we tend to stay embedded in these abusive relationships or these abusive marriages. And that's when it leads to cases such as suicide.
A friend of mine says that when she walks along the streets of Nairobi, comparing with her country, she looks at our women and she sees a lot of sadness in their eyes. Has it gotten to the level where we should get concerned about the mental wellness of people who are in marriages and relationships?
Yes, it's advisable that anyone should seek help, whether they're in a marriage or they're in a relationship, as long as you feel your mental space is not okay. Then it's good to get out of that relationship, or rather it's good to seek for therapy.
Or counseling. No, because we may not have enough time, and this is very important. Is there a way that you can create a mental safe space, that you have a wellness program or a habit that can put you in a place where you have a mental wellness program, that you don't become vulnerable to mental conditions?
Yes. First, I'd like to address that in relation to the challenges facing mental health management and treatment, especially in this country. Number one is low awareness. We don't talk enough about mental health well-being. And because people still don't know the aspect or what it means to be mentally healthy, they tend to brush it off. Not many people will come for counseling because they tend to believe that is something for white people, or it's
for the rich people.
Yeah, for the rich.
Yes, we are Africans, we are tough. Yes. That's what they say.
Some even will say, Kenyans, Kenya atupatangi depression, you know, because they relate it to Western world. But the truth is, anyone can fall victim of depression. Like I said, low awareness is one of the challenges that is facing the management and treatment of mental health.
And I think even in African culture, there was counseling. We had mothers and aunties. I still go back home and sit with my mother, and what she does all the time, that feels like counseling. So we should not be afraid of embracing this. Other people talk about particular therapies, having a place where you can go and unwind, having an activity that you can do and something like that. They're talking about the sense of smell and the sense of sight, anything that can put your brain in a different space. Does that work? What is it like?
Yes, it does. Well, people are different, definitely. And I feel anything that will make you relax is definitely good. So for some people, yoga works. Like recently, I was talking to a friend, and she was telling me anytime she feels like she's about to slip into that state of depressed mood, she does yoga or goes jogging. So for some people, they tend to engage in exercises. Some people talk to other people. Some people travel. So we have different coping mechanisms of dealing with mental health issues.
Is it important for you to know what you like know what music appeals to you, know what colors are appealing to you, know what scent is appealing to you in whatever environment? Could this help you to get yourself into a safe space?
Yes, it's important to know what works for you, because definitely what works for you will not work for me. So once you realize that intervention that works for you, then by all means, go for it.
Indulge.
Yes.
Okay. We're coming back to talk about mothers who think that they're too busy and they have no time, or fathers who say they have no time, plus every other thing that we haven't covered in the next 5 minutes. My viewer at home, we're talking about mental illness, and Delin tells me that today, this moment, I have to try and use English for her sake, and I hope that I'll get enough time to be able to highlight this in the language that you love most, as is Swahili. But for the time being, I'd like you to take a look at this clip that we took a while back, where in the village, they were doing an awareness program and were able to talk about some of the factors that they think cause mental illness and how the culture in that area interferes with the perception. Have a look.
Everyone is affected or afflicted. Amongst the admissions we have in the mental health unit, 45% of the people who have been admitted are suffering from depression, something that can actually be taken care of, something that can be treated, and not something that people have always been referring to as witchcraft or something that is a curse on the community. So this is to just sensitize the public and our parents, our children out there, that we are here to assist, we are here to help. And mental health is not stigma. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to come up and accept. Accept help, accept there's a problem, and we will work with you each and every step of the way.
Worldwide, about 800 people take their own lives through suicide. Meaning every 4th second someone is taking his or her own life. This affects the age of 15 to 29, but of late the ages are coming as low as 9 years committing suicide. We are yet to find out what is the cause of the problem, but we know that the recent society has a lot of challenges that is making people not be able to cope up with them, and thus choosing to take their own lives.
Yes, Delin, that was taken in Casey, and according to them in that moment, almost every minute somebody takes their life, and as young as 9 years old. And I know we've been able to highlight some of the causes: depression and disappointments. But religion and culture have played a role, and the whole clip actually of this particular item had them talking about witchcraft and some of the beliefs that can actually get someone into a battered state. How does religion and culture play into this conversation?
Well, religion and culture have a significant role to play as far as mental health is concerned. Most people in Kenya relate mental illness to religious factors or spiritual factors.
Mtu ameniroga. But how is that? Because when you're low, you probably already know the reason why you're low. I am affected because my husband is an infidel. I don't have a job. Is it not they say that I don't have a job because I have been bewitched? How does it play in?
Well, most of these setups that we live in, especially up country, are such kind of setups where most people are not informed, and it has been like that for a very long time. Because you'll tend to hear people say, let's say an individual in a certain family has a mental health issues, many times we'll hear people say, ata baba yake alikuwa hivyo, ata babu yake alikuwa hivyo. So they tend to carry that generation of, rather that mentality along.
Yeah. That it's genetical.
That is
this
genetic.
is when now somebody becomes dysfunctional and begins talking to themselves, you know?
Yes.
They relate to genetics and witchcraft.
Yeah, genetics and witchcraft. And many of them resolve to calling a priest or a pastor because they tend to believe uko na mapepo. So they don't really embrace mental health as generally any other form of physical ailments, maybe, or just like a medical condition, because like I said, because of low awareness, they're not informed.
So the moment you start talking to yourself, before you begin going to a priest, please see a doctor, because it could be a mental condition. As we wind it, is it possible that we'll get to a point as a country that we have a sustainable healthcare that takes care of mental illness? What do we need to do? What ought we do?
Well, that is one of the issues that was being forwarded, or rather that took center stage in yesterday's mental health task force. And one of the issues that we should do, or rather the government should do, first is to fund mental health more. Mental health is underfunded in this country. And I feel this is a special area because it has special challenges compared to other areas. And that is one area that the government needs to fully fund, or rather put a separate fund. And also we can take this down to the county governments, and say each county government should come up with a plan, or an annual plan rather, to take care of mental health issues. Another aspect will be to train more volunteers and more medical social workers to spread awareness about mental health. Many times we see the cost of mental health, especially in the country, is very high, and not everyone can afford, especially the consultation fees. And most of these experts are based in the urban centers. So because the challenge is geographical distances, it's very hard for someone, let's say, to come from those interior parts of the country to go and seek professional help. Yes.
And what does the treatment look like? Will somebody have to take tablets? Is it a therapy of some sort? What does the treatment look like, and what kind of institutions would someone be placed into when they need to get treatment for mental health?
Well, basically, the first line of treatment I'd recommend, or rather I normally say, before going to a psychiatrist, first seek the services of a counselor or the services of a psychologist, because you could feel better just due to talk therapy instead of rushing to take medication. So unless a medical doctor says you can take medication, but the first line of intervention should be talk therapy, because for most people it works miracles.
So people have underrated the power of talking, just being able to talk out what is in you and what is giving you stress. Finally, as we finish, what is your last word concerning this to the viewer who's watching? I know I have so many people who are listening in right now.
Well, I'd like to say, or rather I'd like to urge more people to come out. And a mental health condition is just an issue like any other. The same way you'd go to visit a dentist because of a toothache is the same way you should go to a therapist. People should not shy away. And anytime we feel that we are not okay mentally, or we are unstable rather, then it's important to seek the services of a therapist.
Thank you so much, Delina. Asante sana. You cut off some of my viewers who love Swahili, but thank you so much. That was very informative. Mtazamaji, niruhusu basi ni rejea katika lugha ambayo tunaipenda sana. Tuliweza kuzungumza lugha ya Kimombo kwa sababu ama kwa ajili yake Delina Dhiambo, ambaye ni mwanasaikolojia, ameweza kuangazia masuala ya afya ya akili, na akasema kwamba usije ukakataa kuzungumza na mwanasaikolojia, makansela, kwa sababu mara nyingi sisi kama wa Afrika hatujihusishi na mazungumzo, na yale ambayo tunayaweka ndani yetu ndio basi huenda yakawa sumu. Na kuona moja kwa moja pale mtandaoni, Jacolando Bonyo, Paul na kuona, Ben Ngetich karibu sana, Patrick Ondieki na kuona, Kizito Yaola na kuona sana, Engineer karibu, Alfino Molo na kuona, Salmon Smith na kuona, Happy Alphonse karibu sana, Edith Achieng, Zipi Okoth, Adi Wise Odondi, Kevin Nyakwar, Wally Otieno, Emma Achieng Muruka, karibuni kwenye watch party. This is a TV47 breakfast show. Nachukua muda niweze kupunga hewa, lakini kwa sababu ni Tuesday na hii ni TV47 breakfast show, uko na nafasi ya kuniambia kwamba ni reggae gani unataka uchezewe ili nawe pia uweze kuwa na siku njema. Mary naambie tena Inonda gani kwa The Gambler is up next. Emmanuel Inonda anasema kwamba anakuchezea The Gambler, lakini una nafasi ya kuitisha 22047 is the SMS line. We will play you the reggae that you want, but for now let us have a little break. We'll be right back. Na mtazamaji, basi Manuel Inona anakuambia kwamba The Gambler imemaliza kucheza, lakini una nafasi kumwambia kwamba unataka gani. Ben Sam Stefan unasema kwamba unataka UB40 yote. Nafahamu fika umekipata wapi masuala kisola hicho UB40. Lakini mtazamaji, tunafahamu kwamba ni siku ya kwenda kazini ama jua kali ama biashara. Wengi wenu basi mko kwenye barabara. Najua kwamba tupo mbashara kule kwenye mtandao. Najua kwamba hata kama hamna televisheni basi unatutazama. Niruhusu basi nikufahamishe barabara iko vipi katika taifa letu, miji mikuu. Mtazamaji, kama ilivyo desturi yetu, tunaanza kwa kuangazia basi maji yenyewe ambayo ni rangi ya samawati. Wanasema kwamba taswira ya maji, mapicha ya maji yanaleta kupoesha ama kuponya roho. Basi wacha nikupe basi kwa karibu, ikiwa unahisi kwamba kuna tashwishi kwenye akili baada ya kuzungumza kuhusu afya ya akili, basi tazama maji itakuletea kupoeshwa kidogo.